Hey, what's up YouTube? Thanks for dropping back by. I don't have a review today so much as a follow-up to my SXK Nebula TD review. That little guy right there. In that review I stated that I did everything single coil. I tried out the dual coil modes, whether it be with round wire, blah blah blah. Did a whole bunch of different things, and I didn't get anything that was, excuse me, what I would consider to be a really pleasurable vape. Either it was too hot, or I just didn't get a good balance of the heat, the airflow, all of that stuff. I had a lot better luck with the single coil solution. Since then I've been poking around with it a bit, and what I have come up with is this. I've got a dual coil Clapton setup sitting on this rig, and I'm running it with about that much airflow. Not a whole lot. About halfway open on both sides, so equivalent to about the single coil, the single slot airflow when I was running it in single coil mode. And what this is 2838 Clapton. I bought it pre-wound on a spool. I took a stretch of it, braided it on itself, pretty easy to do. You just got to wrap it around a pin or something and then just twist it, and it'll come out into a nice steady braid. And canthol's soft enough to actually stay where you put it. And what I ended up with is a 0.7 ohm coil, and at 40 watts I'm pushing about 5.3 volts, thereabouts. And when I power it up, getting somewhere in the high 7 amp range. If you're going to do something like this with Claptons especially, make sure that you know battery safety, Ohm's law, etc., etc. I've got one of the LG Browns in this thing. It's a 20 amp continuous draw, more than safe enough for this thing. On my VTC Mini, one of the things I don't like about the VTC Mini, that, if you can see it right there, there's a bit of a gap. That's more of an issue with the VTC Mini than it is with the atomizer, but a lot of atomizers do sit flush. So keep in mind, this thing does have a long 510 pin, and on any type of Wismec / Joytech / eLeaf product, you may get that gappage that I've got there. There are fixes for that, but I'm not worried about it. Anyway, here we go. 40 watts, dual coil, whole ton of metal. There's going to be a pretty substantial ramp up time because that's a lot of metal to heat up at 40 watts. I'm getting really good performance out of this thing. Pretty dense, saturated, wet vape out of this. Now, am I getting better performance out of this at 40 watts than I was out of the single coil? Not really. I think that the single coil actually did perform a little better and put out a little bit better flavor, mainly because of the airflow. However, because I have these dual coils in there, I do have the option of going to a far higher wattage. And now let's bring it up to, I don't know, let's break it in at 45 watts. 5.6 volts, and it should draw just over 8 amps. Now I'm getting more vapor than I did out of the single coil mode. The flavor's catching up. I think it's just about where it was when I had it just kind of tweaked out in single coil mode. Keep in mind though, you are using more power. And because, sorry about that, and because you're using 2 coils and dual wicks, you're going to be using substantially more juice. I mean, this was topped off right before I started this review, or video rather. It'll go higher than that. Now, one thing I'm noticing, even at 45 watts, this is starting to get kind of warm. And that makes sense. There's a lot of metal in there. These are, like I said, 2838 A1 Canthol Claptons braided on themselves, wrapped it around a 3mm bit, 7 wraps, and each one of these came out to about 1.4 ohms. So let's take her up to, well, hell, 55 watts. See if this thing will do it. 55 watts, 6.2 volts. I'm drawing just over 9 amps. That's with my airflow wide open. Now, I take this top cap off, and this is where you really start feeling the heat. This thing gets a little hot. Let's go with the snorkel here. Let's open it up all the way. Airflow open on both sides, wide open. Make sure I've got this thing situated right in front of the coils. Get maximum airflow to the coils. And same 55 watts, 6.2 volts. Let's see what happens. A lot more vapor because you're putting a lot more air into this thing. Flavor took a little bit of a nosedive, not much. The temperature definitely goes down though because you're cooling the coils a heck of a lot more efficiently. So, let's see if it'll do 60. 60 watts, 6.48 volts, 9.5 amps. Even with all this airflow and this gigantic Dower and chuff cap, it's starting to get pretty warm right now at 60. No sign of a dry hit, but look at the tank. That little bit of vaping that I've done, I've just about wiped this thing out, so I need to top her off before I continue. Oh, another update to this. I was bitching and moaning about the O-rings on this thing and how the tolerances were way too tight on this chamber section. So what I did is I opened up the spares bag and I swapped out those two O-rings that you see there, and I swapped out the O-ring that was at the top of the metal section, that guy right there. This actually gave me just a little bit more tolerance, which I wanted. It sits in there nice and tight right now. And the chamber section gives me a lot less tolerance, meaning I can remove the thing without having to dig into it with my fingernails. So if you pick up one of these and you're having issues with it, go ahead and try that. It'll probably fix the issue. If not, O-rings are pretty cheap and you can pick them up anywhere. And for the price of this thing, you really can't beat it. The top fill method, still not the most ideal, but it still works. Get it lined up, pop her back on there, and let's get her going at 60 watts again just to get the coils warmed up. Like I said, there's a lot of ramp up on this. There we go. At 60 watts, I'm putting out a whole ton of vapor. Let's see what she can do. Let's try 65. 6.75 volts, 8.2 amps. 10 amps, there we go. Ooh. A little warm. No dry hits, just pretty damn warm. Flavor's really good at this point though, but it's a bit warm for my taste. But for the purposes of being thorough, 70 watts, 7 volts, 10.3 amps. If I choke on this, please forgive me. This is going to be pretty hot. And that was just a little quarter-second pull. Good Lord. That's a ton of vapor. And look at my juice level. I've used up over half of that just with those few pulls. 75 watt device. See what you can do. 7.24 volts. Just under 11 amps. And just because I'm running so low, I need to top it off again. You see one of the big cons with the TD. This is a juice guzzler. Top her off just like that. And, you know, I guess you hold about 2 mils in there generously, at least 1.5 mils though. But you see how quickly I'm burning through it. I mean, every time I've been filling this up, I've gone through about 1 mil of juice just like that. You can go through a 30 mil bottle if you're chain vaping in a couple of hours, no problem. 75 watts, 7.24, 10.7, 10.8 amps. This is gonna be interesting. Ooh, that's hot. These little micro pulls here. I'm able to do that. That is nowhere near comfortable for me, though. Let's get this back around 60. That was doable. So yeah, wanted to give this a full breakdown, see what this thing can really do with all the equipment that they provided. If you're willing to put a crazy build in this thing, it'll do it. And it'll chuck some clouds, and above 55-60 watts, the vapor, or the flavor rather, with a dual coil is just as good as a single coil at about 40 watts. It doesn't get much better than that. Even at 75 watts, it was hot as hell, it was producing all kinds of vapor, but I wasn't getting any flavor beyond that level. So yeah, keep that in mind. Not a whole lot to this today. I just wanted to follow up on it and give a full-on, proper review of this. And I just basically touched on the chuck cap last time. So here you go. That's all there is to that. And August 8th is coming up. So do what you got to do. Support advocacy. Go to Not Blowing Smoke, Right to Be Smoke Free, CASA, SAFADA, AMSA. If you can afford a couple bucks or $1 to AMSA, go ahead and donate it. They accept anything, and every little bit helps. There are a whole lot of lawsuits out right now. The biggest one, I believe, is the Right to Be Smoke Free, and a whole lot of people are listed in this. So hopefully this gets rolling. Support it in any way you can. I'll go ahead and step off my soapbox there with that, and just leave you with this. Cloud chasers, you can apply to this. It'll absolutely do it. Just keep in mind, this is a hot little bastard. Especially if you put a crazy coil build in this, and I've noticed heat-wise it really doesn't matter what I put in there, it just gets hot. The chamber's really small. Flavor chasers, yeah, it still applies. Block off a couple of those sides, and you've got a nice little flavor chasing single coil addy. I do wish it came with some sort of ceramic or PEEK baffle. That would be perfect, but yeah, nothing available like that. Not much else to say about this. It's still a great flavor chasing, and now I've demonstrated a good cloud chasing addy. And yeah, I've noticed that on Fastech it's listed as discontinued. GearBest has them out of stock, so you might have a little trouble finding these. I don't know if SXK is doing away with these. If they are, it's a real shame. I mean, between this and the Nebula TF, I really do prefer this a bit more. I think this is just a little bit more versatile. It works better as an RDA, and yeah. There you go. SXK's been doing really, really good stuff, and I'm really impressed with this. They do have a new addy out, Vaping With Vic, Vic Mullin. He put out a review of it. It's the Corolla 1.5. A couple small changes to it that make a big difference. So I'll go ahead and post a link below in the descriptions so you can see that review. So yeah, with that I'll go ahead and leave and stop babbling. Vape on, vape safe.